From this session, we shall look at the new disease that has threatened the existence of the population known as COVID-19. Today, we shall look at the scientific details of this particular disease, and in the subsequent sessions at regular intervals, we shall also look at some of the varied aspects related to COVID-19 from the aspect of looking at it from the data point of view to the extent of when this epidemic ends and how it impacts the various aspects of social life. Remember, on December 31st, 2019, China has informed the WHO, that is the World Health Organization, that a cluster of cases of pneumonia of unknown cause have been detected in Wuhan city of Hubei province in China. Now, if you look at it, this has infected, as of an update from WHO this morning, we find that it has infected more than 2.7 million people, and the fatalities appear to be more than 190,000 across the world, as per the update that we have received this morning on 24th April 2020. They are reported on every continent. From this province, you find that this has spread to each and every continent on this earth except Antarctica. However, all claimants of Antarctica territory such as Argentina, Australia, Chile, New Zealand, France, Norway and United Kingdom have also found these cases within the non-Antarctic portions of their respective countries. Apart from this, on 12th January 2020, the World Health Organization has confirmed that this particular disease is being caused by a novel virus named novel coronavirus, and this is the cause of this respiratory illness. It is novel because this new virus and disease were unknown before the outbreak that began in Wuhan, China in December 2019. So this rapid spread of the virus that causes this disease called COVID-19 has sparked alarm worldwide, and countries around the world are grappling with a surge in these cases. If you observe, on March 11th, 2020, looking at this situation, the WHO has declared that this rapidly spreading coronavirus outbreak is a pandemic. What is this pandemic? A pandemic is a worldwide spread of the new disease. Remember, an influenza pandemic, according to WHO, occurs when a new influenza virus emerges and spreads around the world, and most people do not have immunity. So it is all about the spread of the disease across the world and the lack of ability of the people to fight this new disease because they lack the immunity to fight these new diseases. So the coronaviruses are a large family of viruses which may cause illness in animals or even in humans. In humans, we find that there are several coronaviruses that are known to cause respiratory infections, ranging from the common cold to more severe diseases that we have observed, such as Middle East respiratory syndrome, which is called as MERS, and severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is referred to as SARS. We find that SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-2 is the name given to this novel coronavirus, and COVID-19 is the acronym which is created by WHO that stands for the respiratory disease caused by the novel coronavirus. It stands for coronavirus disease of 2019. So there are 4 main subgroups known as alpha, beta, gamma and delta within these coronaviruses, and SARS-CoV-2 is the 7th coronavirus known to the humans and which infects, of course, humans. SARS-CoV, MERS-CoV and SARS-CoV-2 can cause severe disease, whereas the 4 other coronaviruses such as HKU1, NL63, OC43 and 229E appear to have association with mild symptoms only. So severe acute respiratory syndrome and Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome are both caused by the coronaviruses that came from animals. They were zoonotic diseases. SARS is caused by SARS-CoV. The origin of SARS-CoV is thought to be bats. It's believed that the virus passed from bats to an intermediate animal host, which is probably the civet cat, before jumping into the humans. In 2002, SARS spread virtually unchecked to 37 countries, causing global panic, infecting more than 8,000 people and killing more than 750. MERS appears to be less easily passed from human to human but has greater lethality, killing 35% of 2,500 people that it has impacted. So what about this new novel coronavirus? This novel coronavirus, or for that matter, all the coronaviruses are named for the spikes that protrude from their surfaces. They resemble a crown or they resemble the sun's corona. Hence the name coronavirus. So the SARS-CoV-2 virus is primarily made of three fundamental elements: the spike proteins that help the virus bind with the living cell. Secondly, the ribonucleic acid that it has, which is called as RNA, that start replicating inside the living cell. And thirdly, it has a fatty envelope. It has a fatty envelope that it tries to hold all the components together within it. Given these three components, it is RNA which is very fundamental aspect of this novel coronavirus, which is of single strand one. So what is this RNA? We have some fundamental understanding from the cell biology. The picture that you are looking at gives you the structure of the cell in any eukaryote. Here, generally, in any eukaryotic cell, we see that the cell has this fundamental unit called cytoplasm that you are seeing here. And this cytoplasm is a thick solution that fills each cell. It is a thick solution that fills each cell and is enclosed by what is called as the cell membrane. And here, it is mainly composed of water, salts, and proteins. If you observe, in any eukaryotic cell, the cytoplasm includes all the material inside the cell and outside of this nucleus. Here, hence, the cell contains, apart from the cytoplasm, what is called as nucleus, and this nucleus is a fundamental organ of the cell structure because it contains what is called as chromosomes, and these chromosomes bear what is called as genes, and these genes are the carriers of the hereditary information. And here the cells of an individual have the genes for maintaining their structure and function. So these genes are made up of segments of what is called as DNA. And if you observe this particular cell, you find that the cell also has what is called as ribosomes, and these ribosomes that you are observing here is a particle that is present in large numbers in all living cells, and it serves as the site of what is called as protein synthesis. And these ribosomes are made up of some of the ribosomal proteins, and they have what is called as ribosomal RNA, which is called as rRNA. So remember, the genes are in the nucleus and also proteins are synthesized in cytoplasm of the cell. So the transfer of information from genes, which is the carrier of hereditary information, to the site of this protein synthesis must occur for cell to carry the same information throughout the life of an individual. So this information generally flows from DNA, that is the particular gene, to the particular protein through what is called as RNA. So a virus on the move, which is looking for a host to cell, has a particular travel kit with it that always includes what is called as its genome and a surrounding protein shell that it has, which is called as capsid, which keeps the viral genome safe, and it helps the virus latch onto the cells and climb inside. So this capsid consists of identical protein subunits whose unique shapes and whose unique properties determine the capsid's structure and function. We observe that some viruses also wear what is called as greasy overcoats. In this picture, as you see, this is called as what is called as an envelope. It's a greasy envelope, and this is made from stolen shards of the membranes of the last cell that they have infected. So the influenza and hepatitis C viruses have these envelopes, as do even the coronaviruses. These envelopes are also there within herpes viruses and also HIV. So the rhinoviruses, which are responsible for most common colds, and also polioviruses, don't have these envelopes. Hence, here you have a practical takeaway. These enveloped viruses particularly despise soap because it disrupts these greasy membranes, which is called as an envelope, which is why washing your hands at regular intervals works wonders for the prevention of this coronavirus from spreading. So the corona may spread via surfaces, and evidence shows that the virus is capable of surviving much the same as SARS, because it tells us that it can survive up to 72 hours as per the current research has shown on most surfaces. However, its main way of spreading seems to be the droplet infection. When people cough, or if you touch someone who is ill and then your face, say rubbing your eyes or nose. So resisting from such acts is very crucial in preventing this disease from transmission or its from spread. Apart from this, COVID-19 appears to transmit more easily through the trusted source than the SARS. One possible explanation that can be given here is that the amount of virus or viral load, what is called as viral load, appears to be highest in the nose and throat of the people with COVID-19 shortly after the symptoms they develop. That means high viral loads in the upper respiratory tract is the key contrast that it has against SARS, in which the viral loads peaked much later in the illness. So this indicates that people with COVID-19 may be transmitting the virus earlier in the course of the infection, just as their symptoms are developing but before they begin to be worsened. Thus, the potential for persons infected with SARS-CoV-2 to shed and transmit the virus while asymptomatic also is much higher than SARS. Thus, COVID-19 appears to transmit more easily than SARS because there have been reported cases of COVID-19 transmission before the development of symptoms, which is absent with SARS. However, the question now arises is, how do these viruses enter cells and they replicate themselves and head for the exit? Remember, penetrating a cell's perimeter is not that easy because cells have what is called as outer membranes, which are normally tough to penetrate without any kind of special permission or special pass that we can call. But viruses have their ways of tackling these cells into letting them in. Typically, if you find a portion of the viral capsid will have a strong affinity to bind with one or the another protein dotting the surfaces of one or another particular cell type. I repeat, typically a portion of viral capsid will have a strong affinity to bind with one or another protein which dots the surfaces of one or another particular type of cell. This binding of the viral capsid with that of the cell surface protein serves as an admission ticket for this virus, easing the virus's invasion of the cell of a particular type. So for a virus to spread, it must first find a way into the cell. If you observe with SARS-CoV-2, when it is thought to spread mainly from person to person between people who are in close contact with another, within about 6 feet, and through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of the people who are nearby or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. So the essential steps of virus replication are similar if you observe for all the virus classes. First, a virus particle which is called as virion must attach to the outer surface of the host cell. Next, it penetrates the cell membrane and enters the cytoplasmic environment that we were looking at earlier. Some or all the outer surface layers of the virus, that is envelope and also capsid, are removed so that whatever the viral genome, whether it is DNA or RNA, and in the case of coronavirus we find it is the single stranded RNA, it becomes accessible to the cellular organelles and enzymes which will initiate this replication process. So the newly synthesized viral nucleic acid and proteins are then assembled, which is called as maturation, into new viral particles which may leave the cells either by simple breakdown of the cell membrane, which means it is basically dead, or by a process called budding, as the membranes of the outer cell surface or even in the what is called as endoplasmic reticulum within the cell structure. So not all viruses kill the host cell. However, with respect to COVID-19, what we observe is this SARS-CoV-2 has this trait of killing the host cell. So once a virus enters the living cell, which is called as host cell, and takes over the cell's inner workings, the cell cannot carry out its normal life sustaining tasks. So the host cell becomes a virus manufacturing plant, and because of this it makes viral parts that then resemble into whole viruses, and they go on to infect even other cells. So eventually the host cell dies. Now if you observe the entire respiratory system that the humans have, and if you apply this entire concept of viral intro, then its expansion and then its exit, we observe that this is occurring particularly in the respiratory system with respect to COVID-19. Look at your respiratory tract, and if you observe it as an upside down tree, you observe that the trunk is the trachea, and you observe that whatever the splits that it has into smaller and smaller branches in your lungs will be your what is called as tiny air sacs called as alveoli. This is where the oxygen goes into your blood and also carbon dioxide comes out. What we observe here is the new coronavirus can infect the upper or lower part of your respiratory tract. It travels down your airways. The lining can become irritated and inflamed, and here in some cases the infection can reach all the way down into your alveoli, as you observe here, right? Apart from this, we know that every basic unit of life has what is called a cell, and these cells make up tissues, and there are 4 basic types of tissues that we observe. One is epithelial tissue, second one is the connective tissue, third one is the muscle tissue, and the fourth one is nervous tissue. In this, the connective tissue has many cells into its fold, such as the cells which are called as the support cells, the immune cells, the blood cells. All these form part of connective tissue. And epithelial tissue covers not only the external environment, but also it covers the entire internal environment through many cell types. So the boundary between you and your environment, whatever you observe here, is marked by a continuous surface which is called as epithelium. And this continuous surface which is marked by what is called as epithelium is made of contiguous cells. These are the epithelial contiguous cells that you observe here. Thus, this epithelial tissue serves both as a protective barrier for the body and also as an active interface with the environment. So the structural and functional integrity of this epithelium is vital for normal health of any individual. Here these lungs have, as I told you, what is called as alveolar sacs, and then these alveolar sacs are fundamentally what is called as alveola. So the lungs are lined with billions of such epithelial cells amongst all these structures that we are referring to. So these epithelial cells have what is called as transmembrane enzyme, which is called as ACE2. This is what is being focused on by many of the researchers now in the preparation of the vaccine. So this acts as a receptor that enables the SARS-CoV-2 to launch its attack. So this is spike and it has spike protein. This is ACE2, and here the virus spike protein binds to the receptor, and once it is binds to receptor, it fuses with the cell surface and then releases its genetic material, which is RNA in the case of SARS-CoV-2, into the cell. And if you observe, the coronavirus that causes SARS, also called as SARS-CoV, uses the same ACE2 receptor to invade the cell. Now, once it is inside the cell, the virus releases its genetic material, which is fundamental, as I told you, RNA, into the cell. The cell is now, this is how it is released. The cell is now susceptible to execute these new instructions of this particular virus called SARS-CoV-2, and these instructions are not only to copy but also to resemble. So the virus's genome, which is fundamentally the complete set of genetic information in an organism that provides all of the information the organism requires for its effective functioning as a life form, is less than 30,000 genetic letters long. If you look at the Indian genome, which is over 3 billion. So this particular aspect of cell becoming susceptible to the execution of these new instructions which are about to copy and also resemble is a significant step in its spread. So the infected cell now reads the what is called as RNA and begins making proteins that will keep the immune system at bay fundamentally and help assemble the new copies of the virus. So there are two things which are occurring here. The immune system is being kept at bay. That means immune system is not responding to this new development immediately, and it help assemble new copies of a virus also. So antibiotics that kill bacteria do not work against these viruses, but researchers testing antiviral drugs that might disrupt these viral proteins and hence stop the infection. So as the infection progresses, we find that the machinery of the cell begins to churn out new spikes and other proteins that will form more copies of the coronavirus. Now this is how this RNA is released further and more copies of the coronavirus can be seen. So it fills up with more and more copies of original coronavirus that we observe here, and new copies of this virus are assembled and carried to the outer edges of the cell. And this occurs until it reaches a critical point, and then the cell receives one particular final order, which is about self destruction, and this is how the host cell is subjected to what is called as death. And once this signal is being received, the host cell reaches to its culmination point called death. Remember that ACE2 is also an important enzyme in regulating blood pressure, and hence in human beings with high blood pressure, we observe that as per the current study goes, the impact of COVID-19 seems to be more severe because the blood pressure is also being remaining unregulated. So the number of infected cells grows exponentially, and after about 10 days, millions of body cells are infected, and billions of such viruses now might have swarmed the lungs. And at this particular time, if you look at the study of these cells by the microscopic study, or even if you look at through the pathological reports that we have, the lungs in these particular situations characteristically show what is called as acute respiratory distress syndrome. Acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is called as ARDS, and this is very, very dangerous and potentially fatal condition. So the structures and processes of the body that provide protection against or resistance to the infection or toxins or even a disease is called as immune system, and this immune system has been kept at bay by these viruses. How this occurs? Now in the lungs, coughing and sneezing, we observe that mechanically eject some of these pathogens which have entered in the form of virus and other irritants from the respiratory tract. So the flushing action of these tears and also urine also mechanically expel these pathogens, while you observe that the respiratory tract and also the gastrointestinal tract secrete what is called as mucus, such that they serve to trap and entangle these microorganisms. So these biomechanical systems that are there as part of your body are also part of the immune system, which act as the fundamental barriers for entry of any such foreign pathogen. So this coughing and sneezing as a fundamental characteristic of SARS-CoV-2 infected disease called as COVID-19 is probably the reflection of the immune system against their entry. Thus, to function properly, an immune system must detect a wide variety of agents which are known as pathogens. And these pathogens vary from viruses to parasitic worms, and they must distinguish them from the organism's own healthy tissue. You must remember that these pathogens can rapidly evolve and adapt, as I told you earlier, and thereby avoid detection and neutralization by the immune system. However, multiple defense mechanisms have also evolved to recognize and neutralize these pathogens. There are fundamentally two types of immune systems that an individual would have. One is innate immune system, and the second is adaptive immune system. Out of these, we find that blood acts as a key component of innate immune system that has a major role to play. Earlier, we have looked at what is called as connective tissue. Blood also acts as a connective tissue. Not only as a connective tissue, blood has another important role to play, which is called as being a key component of the innate immune system. We know that blood is made up of the red blood cells, which is called as erythrocytes. It's also made up of white blood cells, which are called as leukocytes, white blood cells. Then thirdly, it has what is called as platelets, which is called as thrombocytes, and then it has plasma. So these leukocytes, or which are called as white blood cells, which account for 1% of the total blood count, are part of this immune system, which is called as innate immune system. There are two different types of white blood cells that we observe. One is phagocytes and the other is what is called as lymphocytes. One is phagocytes and the other is lymphocytes. What are these phagocytes? Phagocytes can move through your blood vessels and tissue to ingest or absorb invaders. So the phagocytes target organisms that cause disease or pathogens, which is what the name that we use, and then they also target whether there are any toxins. Remember, neutrophils are the important component of these phagocytes, and these neutrophils as an important part of phagocytes are most plentiful. They are most plentiful of WBC. Toxins are a natural poison that we know is produced by some organisms as a form of protection. Sometimes when a phagocyte has absorbed a pathogen, it sends out a chemical that helps lymphocytes identify what kind of pathogen it is. So importantly, white blood cells produce chemicals that fight antigens by going to the source of the infection or inflammation. So neutrophils are very important because unlike some of the other white blood cells, they are not limited to a specific area of circulation, and they can move freely through the walls of the veins and into the tissues of your body to immediately attack all antigens. So each pathogen which carries a specific type of antigen, and hence you have what is called as lymphocytes in your body, and each of these lymphocytes in your body also carries what is called as antibody, and this antibody is meant to fight the antigens carried by these pathogens. There are three main types of lymphocytes in the body. One is called as the B cells, the second one is called as T cells, and the third one is called as natural killer cells. Here, these B cells create antibodies that attack bacteria, viruses and toxins that enter the body. T cells kill cells in the body that have been overtaken by viruses or that have become cancerous. So like T cells, natural killer cells kill infected or cancerous cells with some minute distinction. But instead of producing antibodies, they make a special enzyme or chemical that kills the cells during the infection of this COVID-19. So how do this entire immune system acts? This leads us to this concept of what is called as cell signaling. What is this cell signaling? Cell signaling is a fundamental aspect of any functioning of the organism. It is any communication process that governs the basic activities of the cells, and also it coordinates multiple cell actions. So the ability of the cells to perceive and correctly respond to their microenvironment, is the basis of development. It is the basis for tissue repair, and it's also basis for the immunity. Apart from it is also basis for normal tissue maintenance. So all these processes can occur only through this signal that these cells receive from this communication network, which is called as cell signaling. Remember, there are components called cytokines, and these cytokines are the important signaling molecules of the immune system. What this immune system through its response does is, during its response, you find that there is a strong presence of these cytokines in the circulation, and hence their presence will have a very strong systemic effect. These cytokines also have another function, and these cytokines try to activate what is called as receptors, and these receptors have been activated by these molecules called cytokines, and hence they are also known as recruitment molecules. Now, why are we looking at all this scientific information? This is important because of the study of COVID-19 not only through the microscopic lens but also through the lab reports. For reference, if you look at any normal white blood cell count, we find that it would have around 1 into 10 power 10 white blood cells, and out of which 70% will be what is called as neutrophils that we have studied earlier. So the blood of COVID-19 patients has a low level of white blood cells, a low level of WBC. This is probably because they are all in the lungs. That means the epithelial cells with its transmembrane enzyme called ACE2, which has been activated by this as a receptor by the cytokines, number one. Number two, the presence of cytokines in lungs in large quantity, and because of which we find that the immune response is leading to the presence of these neutrophils in order to attack these pathogens to be present within the lungs, clearly tells us the fact that the COVID-19 patients has a low level of blood cells because of their presence in the lungs. So given all the recruitment molecules, the cytokines which are found in the lungs of COVID-19 patients, it is clear that it is a driving cause of damage in the disease, which is because of misrecruitment of the neutrophils to the lung by these cytokines. So the cell communication here is leading to what is called as miscommunication. So as we have seen earlier, the T cells that can kill cells in the body that have been overtaken by the viruses are present here. However, this miscommunication leads to the programmed killing of even healthy cells also. This is what very significant in COVID-19 patients. So the concomitant immune responses prior to the patient recovery can cause permanent then irreversible damage that can lead to lifelong disabilities. So the lungs become obstructed with fluid and dying cells, making it difficult to breathe. So a small percentage of patients and these infections can lead to acute respiratory distress syndrome that we were referring to earlier, and possibly it can also lead to death. However, as reported by WHO, a majority of infected people show only mild symptoms. This is what we observe here, because these mild symptoms occur due to a mixture of adaptive immune response in the form of what? In the form of T cells is seen, and hence the antibodies that are produced removes the virus that we observe in this particular picture. And we see that there is only few critical to moderate cases which are leading to the possibility of death, and the possibility of death from the mild cases is very less in this particular picture that we can see, which is produced by WHO and China as part of their joint study of this particular disease called COVID-19. And the thickness of this arrow indicates what is called as the proportion of cases which are leading to fatalities. However, SARS virus seemed to be capable of infecting multiple cell types in several organs, including in a large number of circulating blood. Apart from that, the epithelial cells of the respiratory tract that we were looking at earlier, the mucosa of even the intestine, and also the epithelium of kidneys. Along with that, it can also infect the neurons of the brain and some of the different organs also. However, the immune cells and the pulmonary epithelium, which is meaning the epithelial cells of the respiratory system, are the main sites of injury by this new disease called COVID-19. This is why we have looked at the entire system of respiratory system, entire aspect of the immune system, and how they mutually act during the attack of this SARS-CoV-2. Along with that, in more severe cases, as we see, millions of these epithelial cells get died, and with them the lungs protective lining is also gone. That means the alveoli or the tiny air sacs through which the breathing occurs can be infected by bacteria. That is usually a big problem. So if you look at this particular picture, this is what it tells. This is the healthy lungs that we see, and the lungs which are with this condition called ARDS. So patients here get acute pneumonia and respiration become hard or even fails, and hence patients feels lot of difficulty even for survival. This is where we need ventilators. So as we understood, the symptoms of COVID-19 are non-specific, and the disease presentation can range from no symptoms, that is asymptomatic, to severe pneumonia and death. However, if you observe this particular picture with a death rate that is very less, if you take into consideration the total number of cases as we observe here, it seems to be the fact that as of April 23rd, 2020, the death rate seems to be below 1% of the total number of cases that are considered, and a greater degree of recovery rate can be seen, because of which it appears that COVID-19 seems to be less dangerous. However, if we look at it as a percentage of total number of closed cases, it stands at a lethal figure of 20%. Hence, we know for sure that it is much more contagious and spreads faster. So read this entire scientific information given, take notes out of them. This is important for the both preliminary examination and both the stages of main examination. We shall look at some of the varied aspects of COVID-19 in relation with varied aspects of the social life in our subsequent sessions at regular intervals.